It's called as learning session where there is two-way conversation, especially at the end of the session. So last 15 minutes are devoted for discussion. Please feel free to ask any question you would like to on the subject matter. You may either post the question on the chat box or you may unmute yourself and speak. But till that time, please keep your mics muted. Excepting Keshamurthy, all the other mics will be muted during the time of presentation. The second announcement is that next Sunday, 28th February, there will be no tea breakfast session in view of the National IACTA conference. But we'll resume it on the 7th of March. As usual, on the Sunday at 9 a.m. Please log in at 8:45. And I would like also to announce that 17th and 18th of March, we have ECMO CME under the banner of FCA, ICA and ISCC Bangalore chapter in the evening. Please join us. And to start the subject, children are not miniature adults. That is the first statement usually made whenever we talk about pediatric age group. And we have Dr. Keshamurthy, who has extensive experience in pediatric cardiac surgery, surgical anesthesia, to talk to us about the role of TEE in congenital heart disease, especially when they are subjected to surgical or invasive procedures. Dr. Keshamurthy is my colleague, and we all respect him a lot for his capabilities. Dr. Keshamurthy, please take over and start the proceedings.
Good morning, sir, and everyone who is seniors and colleagues and my fellows. Thank you, sir, for this opportunity for me to present whatever little bit what I have been able to accumulate over the years. And thank you for the great introduction. Here, I'm audible. Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Okay, yes, thank you. So coming to TE, transesophageal echocardiography, it's a very important tool in the perioperative period of all the adults and pediatrics. And especially in pediatrics, we find to note every minute changes which have been created over the perioperative period and to record them so that the postoperative care of the patient is complete with the preoperative diagnosis and treatment being done on the table completely. So it helps in the diagnosis of all the pediatric conditions and in the treatment follow-up of the treatment. It's it was used more commonly also in cardiac catheterization for diagnosis and therapeutic procedures. Where now very few of them use, but they use transthoracic echocardiography, and it is an essential piece of equipment for us. So the most important we have to do is try to reassess the lesion just before skin incision so that we are sure of what we are dealing with, and reassess the issues that have been mentioned in the transthoracic echo, like what is the degree of mitral regurgitation, what is the degree of obstruction, what is the where all the surgeon might have to do a therapeutic procedure on bypass, because going back again on bypass is more traumatic to the patient. So adequate. This is the most important indications include panic calls like unable to come off bypass but hemodynamically unstable, low saturations to find out where the things are getting connected, step up on the saturation run, and many a times surgeons need to know that what they have done, is it appropriate or it is inadequate. So in an ASD, we have to, most common things which we have to see is the pulmonary venous drainage, especially in PAPVCs, and the extent of valve repairs, associated mitral valve or tricuspid valve repair, and outflow tract obstruction if there are any. And the pediatric probe which we routinely use is of this, which is around 7.5 millimeters width and 5.5 millimeters in depth. So most often we don't see any much of the ASDs coming now to the theater because quite a lot of ASDs have been closed in the cath lab itself. But why do some of the ASDs come to the theater? The most common thing is absence of some of the borders. So which are the borders which are required in closing a device closure of the VSD? So this picture shows the aortic rim. Here we are seeing the mitral rim, and in this view we are seeing the SVC rim. It's in 90 degrees SVC, and this is the tricuspid rim, and this is the IVC rim where it is in the deep in the extended uh, bicaval view. So where these rims at least have to be, according to the cardiologist requirement, minimum 4 millimeter so that the device can hold. Otherwise, there is chances that the device gets displaced. And one of the most common secondum ASD which we see, this is the video showing the ASD is present here, and the ASD has been closed. And you are seeing that the bubble test, there is no bubble going to the left atrium, everything is in the right atrium. So an effective seal has been created with the secondum ASD. Here we are, this is, you see PAPVC, the pulmonary venous coming here, and there is obstruction at the level of the IVC, what is sinus venosus ASD or scimitar syndrome. So in this patient, post-op, this is the patch which has relieved the obstruction and has separated the pulmonary venous blood from the IVC and SVC blood. The most common problem here encountered is when the patch is put around the IVC rim. So we have to be careful in assessing that the IVC blood is not coming into LA, and we'll most often you may find that if it is left open or partially open, there is desaturation immediately after coming off bypass. So we need to reassess on TEE and request the surgeon to change the orientation of the patch so that it gets all the IVC blood is routed into the right atrium. As I said, this one is another secondum ASD where you see a lot of flow across and a large ASD. The same ASD is being closed with the device. You can see the device in situ. So if there are chances that when this device doesn't sit properly or the rims are adequate, you may finally find the device swimming either in the right ventricle or in the RVOT or attached to the pulmonary valve. So then this becomes a semi-emergency where we have to take the patient, extract the device and close the ASD surgically. Another type of ASD is the primum ASD, where it is associated with, this is a primum ASD, and you can see the mitral regurgitation here, and the cross-sectional view, transgastric, you are seeing a nice gap in the AML, which shows the presence of cleft. So the same has been closed here with a patch. The ASD patch in a primum ASD has to be very much redundant because there is no septal leaflet of the tricuspid valve, and this patch works as the septal leaflet and prevents regurgitation. You are seeing that there is no obstruction. There is a neat blue flow in through the tricuspid valve, but there is no much regurgitation also. If this patch is put tight or it is the smaller patch is put, the patient will end up with severe tricuspid regurgitation. And checking the gradient across the tricuspid valve, maximum of 7 and mean of 3 is acceptable. So we need to check the gradient across the tricuspid valve. Coming to ventricular septal defects, the preoperatively most common, the surgeon wants to know whether in whether the VSD is routable to the great arteries properly with the ventricles in association with the great artery, and from which chamber, like right atrium or through the pulmonary artery, he has to approach the VSD. So the access to the VSD might be requested. And rootability, especially if we have a double outlet right ventricle, or in cases of transposition of great arteries, we need to check the rootability of the VSD. Postoperatively, we need to check for residual VSD, patch position, and outflow obstruction to aorta and pulmonary artery, and the associated valve regurgitations. Especially in a subarterial VSD, we may find that after the patch is put, the patient may have aortic regurgitation. So when the patch is held up with the leaflet of the aortic valve, so these cases might need to go back, and the surgeon has to reposition the patch in order to eliminate the regurgitation which patient has developed. And many a times the surgeon detaches the leaflet, the chordae of tricuspid septal leaflet, try to close an inlet VSD, and when the tricuspid chordae are reattached, we find sometimes they are again swimming in the right atrium, in which case they have to go back and stick it back so that there is no tricuspid regurgitation. So the various VSDs which we routinely see is the first perimembranous VSD, so inlet VSD. This is muscular VSD and a subarterial VSD. This is again the various relation with the aortic valve, RVOT, and to see that most of the VSDs are making at around 1/3 to half of the rim of the aortic valve. So anywhere you touch, you might be landing, damaging the aortic valve. So the surgeon has to be very careful when it is suturing the patch around the aortic annulus. So the most common one is the perimembranous VSD. So you are seeing a VSD here. VSD is seen with the flow, and the same thing, you can see a nice turbulent flow across the VSD. This is another case which you are seeing, and the septal leaflet of the tricuspid valve is attached to the septum, and it's formed a pouch around that. Probably this was done very early in 2014, so they did not think of closing it with the device. But now if you find a pouch like this, the cardiologist might close with a device being placed in the pouch, which prevents the shunting of blood from left to right. But ideally the whole thing has to be closed instead of, because in the pouch the patient may develop tricuspid regurgitation. So it has to be sorted out. This is the same patient with where you are seeing the VSD in the coming, and you're nicely seeing the aortic valve. As I said, half of the rim of the aortic valve is related to the various VSDs which we routinely encounter. This is again a picture, and this is the post closure of the VSD. You're seeing the patch here, and there is a bit of mild tricuspid regurgitation has also developed. Then another thing is, this could be debated that whether it is a LV to RA jet. So we need to check this in the transgastric view, where we see the tricuspid valve and the relation of the patch very well, cross section of the tricuspid valve with the aortic valve. So there it was checked and found that it is more of TR than RV to LV to RA jet. Sorry. This is the patch in a which has been put, and it's completely occluded with no blood crossing across. Another one, subarterial VSD, where the VSD is situated just below the between the pulmonary artery and the aorta, and you can see that the aortic valve is there. This is the mitral valve, and the RVOT here, and the VSD is shunting from left to right. The same trying to see in the aortic short axis. So here the VSD is not seen so well, so that surgeon might not be able to access the VSD through the pulmonary artery. He'll have to go from the right atrium itself. The most common thing is most of them would be mentioned as multiple VSD, and surgeon would find one or maximum two VSDs. And finally, at when you come off bypass, you find some surprises that there'll be a lot of shunts coming across the interventricular septum. So this is one of the muscular VSD, which is to be closed, and this is the closed part. This is another in the long axis view. We're trying to establish the relation or how close it to the aortic valve. Here the VSD has been closed. You can see that hyperloose white area where they have taken the stitches, and there is no blood crossing across. And the same in the aortic short axis view. There is no aortic regurgitation, and the VSD has been closed. So we have to recheck regarding the aortic valve, because most of the times we may land up having mild or moderate AR, which has to be addressed immediately. VSDs, now it's become more this thing that they are closed in the cath lab with devices. This is one of the VSDs which have been closed with the device. You can see the device sitting in, and there is no blood crossing. Even if little bit whatever is crossing is going to, blood is going to clot, and it's going to abolish the shunt. The next most important lesion which we commonly encounter in the OR is tetralogy of Fallot, which is four components. Main is ventricular septal defect, hypertrophied right ventricle, or right ventricular outflow tract obstruction, and this is one of the preoperative view. You can see that there is overriding of the aorta, and the septum is half covering the aortic valve, with half of the aorta being in the right ventricle and half is towards the left ventricle. Here, this is the aortic valve, and that's the mitral valve. So the same view in the transgastric long axis, you are seeing the aortic valve, and this is a very important view where you are seeing the tricuspid valve here. And after the patch is put, you can make out really like how whether there is a leak at the tricuspid septal end, or it is coming from the aortic root, aortic valve side. So this view in postoperative time is very useful in assessing the residual leak. So this is post-op. The VSD is closed, and this is sorry, this is the pre-op only. With you can see that the gradient is, there is still some there is gradient here across the RVOT, and there is adequate RV muscle which might have to be resected or at least divided. And post-op we found that there was a gradient of 26 and mean of 11, which is acceptable. Anywhere less than 30 gradient, 30 to 40 gradient across the pulmonary valve is acceptable in the for the post-op. And now with more incidences of transatrial VSD tetralogy correction being done, we may encounter little higher pressures. And so long as the heart is comfortable and we are not having any hemodynamic disturbance, hemodynamic issues, and the rhythm is normal, little higher pressures are accepted for the RVOT gradient. This is another showing the cut end of the muscle is still hanging there, and here cut end of the muscle, that's the moderator band, and this is the RVOT. There's some turbulent flow is there, but that was acceptable. And most common thing is patient, you come off bypass, patient does well immediately, and within 6 hours, 8 hours or 24 hours, we suddenly find that the patient's condition deteriorates. The most two causes is the right ventricular failure in the postoperative period, and the next cause is a flyal a VSD patch. You can see here, this is the tricuspid valve, that's the aortic valve, and the VSD patch which is put is swimming in the right LVOT, that is flying towards the aortic valve, and it is not been stuck here adequately. So the patient has developed a shunt, and he will start deteriorating in clinical parameters. The same patient again went back on bypass, and the patch repatching has been done for the VSD. So now you can see that there is the patch is nicely stuck to the aorta below the aortic valve, and there is no leak across the VSD, across the patch. Next is one more is double outlet right ventricle, which needs intracardiac correction. So here you are seeing that the interventricular septum is almost to the away from the aortic valve, and the aorta and the pulmonary artery, which is anterior, both are arising from the right ventricle. This is the long axis view of the LV, where you are seeing that both aorta and RV PA are in the right ventricle. The same thing trying to be seen through the transgastric view. You can see the VSD flow. This is the pulmonary valve, aortic valve, and the VSD patch. So it is completely, both are into the right ventricle. In the postoperative period, this is a measurement of the LVOT, and this is the narrowest part of the LVOT, which was around, in one view, it was seen as 0.6 mm. And now we are seeing this VSD being closed with a patch. This is the left ventricle, and this is the mitral valve here. The blood is flowing from here through into the pulmonary artery. The gradient across the pulmonary artery was around 10 millimeters of mercury, which was acceptable. We saw primum ASD, now complete AVCD, atrioventricular canal defect, where you can see that there is no septum here, and part of the septum is missing here, and a common AV valve. And postoperatively, you see a nice single patch technique done. The whole patch is attached here, and you're not seeing much MR and no TR. So ideally it should be no MR, no TR, but some mild TR is accepted, mild or moderate TR and mild MR is accepted. But most common thing what we have to see in AV complete or partial AVCD, AV canal defect correction is the gooseneck deformity of the left ventricular outflow tract. See here the AML is very long, and you can see the stitches which are there for the cleft, and this is the long axis, where aortic long axis, sorry, left ventricular outflow tract view, where you are seeing a long LVOT, and but it is unobstructed, so that is acceptable, and we got a gradient of around 9 in the transgastric view. The other lesion most common we see is Rastelli procedure, which is done for where patients who have got DORV, VSD, PS, pulmonary stenosis, where you need to open up create a outflow tract for the right ventricle after the VSD is closed with a patch. So this is the post-operative view of a Rastelli procedure being done, where the LV is connected to aorta with a patch separating the left ventricle from the right ventricle. This is the transgastric view, where the conduit is stitched. You can see the conduit valve here, it is stitched, to the RV and it's connected to the pulmonary artery. So some amount of pericardium will be used. So we have a nice C-shaped view in the transgastric approach. The other common condition is supramitral membrane. You see that that is a thin membrane which is present above the mitral valve. It's very much turbulent flow you are seeing here, and you can see the membrane also very well. The restricting the movements of the mitral valve. Gradient across the mitral valve was peak of 25 and mean of 13. The same patient after the supramitral membrane was excised. You can see that how nicely the AML is moving. There is no turbulence flow, only red and blue flow is seen across the mitral valve, and the gradient has come down to 4/2 in the post-operative period. Another obstructive lesion which was very rewarding is subaortic membrane, where the surgeon has to be very diligent in peeling out the subaortic membrane. So you are seeing here the subaortic membrane is situated here with the LV is hypertrophied, dilated, and you are seeing turbulent flow across the aortic valve. And this is the postoperative view where you see nice blue flow here, and aortic valve is moving completely, and trivial AR is there, and there is no issue across the LVOT. So this is very much acceptable. And this one is trying to show the subaortic membrane. This is the aortic valve and this is the membrane. It will be most of the time circumferential, and it has to be neatly peeled off through the aorta, and surgeon has to be very careful in preserving the aortic valve. And this is the preoperative gradient which we had got 65, which I showed 9 gradient in the postoperative period. Another LV very badly affected situation is anomalous left coronary artery arising from the pulmonary artery. So you are seeing a huge heart left ventricle, and the right ventricle is almost squashed by the enlarged left ventricle, dilated and depressed. That is EF maybe most of the times quoted is around 10 to 15%. Only good thing is you're not seeing much MR here. So maybe patient is lucky not to have MR. So this is another view showing the Alcapa ventricle. So this is post repair. When you are doing the TE, many a times you can see the coronary flow there, which is happening, and it is a very challenging case to come off bypass without resorting to go on ECMO, especially with Alcapas. So another condition which we encounter with pediatrics is Epstein's anomaly. So this is the anterior tricuspid leaflet is everywhere, and the whole of the septal leaflet will be plastered to the interventricular septum. And this is another view trying to show that the most of the left ventricle is most of the right ventricle is atrialized, and see that the tricuspid valve is co-opting here, and the pulmonary valve is here. There is hardly some 3 to 4 centimeter of RV cavity. This is post repair, which I am trying to show. This is the cavity length again is around 3. Probably the surgeon will add up with bidirectional Glenn shunt to decrease the load on the right ventricle. This is the cooptation length, though there is a flail septal leaflet which was resituated by doing Cohn's procedure, and you are seeing a cooptation height of around 1.7 centimeter. Another lesion commonly seen is truncus arteriosus. Here you are seeing the interventricular septum, truncal valve, mitral valve, and you're seeing the flow going directly here. the pulmonary artery is connected to the aorta. This is the same transgastric view, trying to demonstrate a VSD. This is the truncal valve, that's the VSD. This is the RV in the short axis, and this is tricuspid valve in short axis, and that is the left ventricle. So post-op truncus arteriosus, the VSD is big and maybe quite away. So then the patch will look like a W shape because if they put a very tight patch, there'll be LVOT obstruction might result. So they put a redundant patch which will be flopping around in the LVO in both the outlets, and maybe sometimes if it is feasible and it is type 1 truncus, they would do Barbero-Marshall, or you may land up with this case was Barbero-Marshall with a pericardial patch used to augment the right ventricular outflow tract. That is the moderator band in the right ventricle. Then one other lesion most commonly, there we saw the squashed right ventricle. Here you are seeing the squashed left ventricle. Transposition of great arteries where there is no communication between the two ventricles leads to fall in pressures in the left ventricle, and the left ventricle gets squashed, and the thickness of the myocardium is measured to find out if there is LV myocardium is measured to find out if it is feasible to do a switch operation. If it is not feasible, see this, as I said, it is bulging almost into the left ventricular outflow tract. This is the aortic valve, this is the left ventricle, and the interventricular septum is very much bulging into the LV outflow tract. This is showing the post Sennings. This is called a systemic venous baffle, where the SVC and the IVC are connected to this, and it is routed to the mitral valve because the aorta is connected to the lungs, and this pericardium is used to augment the left atrium, where it will give you, this is the blue flow is what you are seeing is the pulmonary venous return. Red flow is pulmonary venous return, and blue is flow into the right ventricle, and the right ventricle acts as a systemic ventricle in these patients. So few more could have been added, but I thought it could be short of time, and I'm already exceeded the time. The most pressure gradients which we routinely measure, veno-venous gradient like sinus venosus ASD, or in cases of pulmonary venous return in a TAPVC, that is total anomalous pulmonary venous connection, the gradient should not be more than peak of 5. If it is more than 5, especially in TAPVC, the moment we start weaning the patient off ventilator, patient will develop pulmonary edema. We have seen 2-3 cases, and these patients have to come back to the theater, and they have to reopen up the connection into the left atrium. So veno-venous gradient, or even in a case of sinus venosus ASD, we cannot afford to have a gradient of more than 5 to 6 across the SVC to RA junction. Otherwise, patient in the post-op will have a face which is red and which is big, and you will swollen up. So then you might have to redo the patch in the sinus venosus. Our right ventricle to pulmonary artery gradients ideally should not be more than 30. But as I said, with the advent of more and more of transatrial approach for tetralogy of Fallot and saving the pulmonary valve, whatever is there, we have been accepting 50 to 60 gradient across the RVOT, and ideally LVOT, left ventricle to aorta gradient, should not be more than 20 or 25. And any step up most often done to find out the by shunting or residual VSD, where you do right atrium and pulmonary artery blood sample to find out the saturation increase. So ideally it should not be more than 5 to 6, and any VSD which is less than 3 millimeters might not even give a step up. That is by experience, and any patients who has got more than 5 mm VSD, you definitely get a step up, which will be ranging somewhere between 9 to 15 millimeters of mercury, by 15% saturation up. So in those cases, the surgeon has to go back, especially if it is a residual VSD with truncus arteriole, with tetralogy of Fallot and pulmonary stenosis or pulmonary atresia, because the lung is not used to high flow in these patients. And instead of just giving 1:1 cardiac output to the lung, if we give more, these patients will sit in the post-op on the ventilator, not able to wean them off. So to conclude, TE in pediatric surgery is a very fine mirror reflecting the capabilities of the surgeon and the abilities of the anesthesiologist in managing the case, and aids in a better surgical outcome. Thank you for the patient hearing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Keshavamurthy, for that excellent presentation. I should call it as outstanding, if I may. A lovely presentation.
You, sir.
Covered all the diseases, disease spectrum in congenital heart disease. You mentioned about ASD RIMS, VSD, tetralogy of Fallot, ABCD, Rastali procedure, Alcapa, Epstein's, Truncus, TGA, etc. So many disease patterns were covered with illustrations from the video loops. They were all done well. And I invite comments from Dr. Vinayak Desurkar, Sridhar Joshi, S. Kumar, following which we'll go to the questions. Dr. Vinayak Desurkar first. Dr. Vinayak Desurkar, do you want to say something?
It was an excellent presentation as usual. And I think the biggest advantage with NH is the variety of cases we can see. Yes, because transesophageal in a pediatric case is often difficult because of the cost of the transducer itself and the durability of the transducer. But I think if you have a good number of cases, that's an affordable solution. And I think for last 10 years, I am seeing this excellent presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinayak.
Yes, thank you for the nice.
We are grateful to you. Dr. Kumar from Madurai.
Yeah, as usual, it was an excellent presentation by Keshav sir.
Thank you,
very fantastic presentation. As Muralidhar sir was telling, it was an extraordinary presentation, and almost you covered everything within that 30 minutes. So yes. I didn't have any queries at present, but anyway, I'll join in between.
Sure. Feel free to unmute and speak out whenever you want to. Sridhar Joshi.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sridhar.
You want to add anything, comment
sir,
anything?
I can't add to my teacher, sir. I only learned more than what I have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And now there is one question about rootability of VSD. Somebody, I don't know the name.
Yes, sir. I do.
Rootability, can you just give a couple of minutes on that point?
Yeah, rootability is when, especially in DORV or in sometimes when there is the abnormality in both the aorta PA separation and the conal septum. So the most important is to find out whether we can root the left ventricle to the aorta, and the main thing is to root the left ventricle to the aorta. Actually, I had supposed to include, but I thought the time will be. So the most ideal situation is to see in the transgastric view, if you can see both the aorta and the tricuspid aorta and the VSD with the LV in the same view. If all these three, LV first, LV, then the VSD, then the aortic valve. If all these three are in the same path and it is in the view, visible in the same view, then the VSD is rootable. So if at all, if it is not seen, or if most of the times we see straddling of tricuspid valve leaflet, but tricuspid few chordae, if they are straddling, they can be detached and attached to the VSD patch. But in case In case if there is complete straddling, or if the tricuspid valve is directly coming in between the aorta and the LV, then it may be difficult to close those VSDs. Then other things like single ventricle pathway or other routes have to be designed. Most easiest way is to in the transgastric view to see all the three together, and that will confirm the routability.
Thank you, Keshav. I just wanted to know, in the last slide, you put the guidelines about the gradients.
Yes, sir.
These gradients, I'm sure it means peak gradient, no? 30 millimeters across RV and PA. Is it the peak or mean you're talking about?
Sir, peak gradient.
It is peak gradient. I
Peak
thought as much.
Peak gradient.
And I also noticed that it did not invert the images, just like the pediatric cardiology. They always invert the images and create confusion. We are already confused about pediatric cardiac lesions. On the top of that, you invert the image, the apex goes down and the broad part of the image goes up, and it adds to confusion. And I asked the pediatric cardiologist, why do you do that? Do you are confused? See the mitral valve on the right side and tricuspid valve on the left side, usually in a 4-chamber view. Why do you invert it? I asked them. Then they said the adult cardiologists are wrong. The pediatric cardiologists are right. This is the normal orientation. That's what they told me. Yeah. But you did not invert that, so it was very easily understandable. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I have one suggestion, or I have to ask him.
Yes, absolutely.
You being a transesophageal probe, you are obviously privileged. But couple of people who are not having that, will a epicardial echo will be useful in the pediatric cases as well? Can you just put some light on that, so that most of them will benefit?
Very nice question, and thank you for that. See, the problem is the transthoracic probes are little bit heavier, bigger. When if it is a bigger child, it is very convenient to use that and do epicardial echo and confirm the lesion and their treatment. But most often what happens is when the child is below 3.5 kgs, actually the pediatric probe advised is to be introduced only beyond 5 kgs. But we have extended our approach and we use it up to 3.5 kgs. But even lesser than, we have done quite a good number of switch operations in 2 kgs and 1.8 kgs, where it becomes impossible to put that probe in that small esophagus. And it is advisable to use epicardial, but the epicardial transthoracic probe, which has to be used for epicardial, is bigger than the heart size itself. So at times we have found that it is very difficult. So then another alternative what we have used in few cases is put a sterile sleeve around the TE probe, and we have put it in the below the heart in the transgastric view. We are able to get some of the images, not complete study, but very few images, at least to see the VSD and some regurgitation what is seen. Epicardial can be done with if we have a smaller probe. Now we are trying to do it with our we're thinking of doing it with our ultrasound probe, which we are using for identifying the vessels and doing the lines.
Yeah. Okay. The other, I think, main issue is, I think you have to train the surgeons how to hold the probe. So yes. That's what is
Yes. That's a good Herculean task. But he is also more interested in seeing it. For us to tell, yes, what you have done is okay. So then he'll cooperate.
Thank you, Vinayak, sir, for the point. If I may add, sir, the advantage of a transesophageal probe use in the epicardial situation is the advantage of a multiplane angle. A transthoracic probe will not give you an addition of a multiplane angle, whereas the same placement will give you 180 degrees across the septum with a transesophageal probe. That definitely adds a lot of advantage of a TE probe in the epicardial position.
By experience, half the time we lose time is lost in asking the surgeon to hold the probe in such a direction so that we'll be able to identify what structure we are seeing.
So all that,
It is to be held on a moving heart, which is moving at 140 rate per minute. So it becomes very difficult to sustain it in one position and to look at.
to overcome this, what we had done is ask the surgeon to keep the probe under at the diaphragmatic surface of the heart. It doesn't move
That's
much
what
there.
you
The contact
use
is
it
much
like a transgastric approach where you
Yes.
flex it, anti-flex it and put it below the heart.
Thank you.
No, if the surgeon is nervous, you said nervous surgeon is also indication to do the echocardiography.
Yes,
If the
sir.
surgeon is nervous, maybe the anesthesiologist can scrub up and hold the probe till the image is done by when the imaging is done by another competent anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
My suggestion is, I think you show the cases where you are using a transesophageal probe as an epicardial probe. I think that will be an excellent presentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can be added.
That
So these are desperate
next
situations.
presentation, I'll try to add that and see.
These are desperate
Thank you for the
situations, and we bail
suggestion.
them out.
Is there any other question? I didn't see anything on the chat box. Let me see it once again.
Yes, sir. Dr. Jigisha Sajni is there, sir. She raised her hand actually.
Yeah, Jigisha can be unmuted, please?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Morning. Thanks for joining us. Please comment and question
Sir,
whatever you want to.
excellent presentation. I want to share things. Sometimes during the VSD diagnosis, pediatric cardiologists miss the RVOT obstruction, particularly near the moderator band. And if we close the VSD, we'll end up in the trouble while coming off bypass. At that time, T helps us. We find the near moderator band, there is obstruction, muscle bundle is there, and we have to cut, otherwise we cannot come off bypass. So particularly in DILV also we have observed sometimes cardiologists miss to diagnose, and T helps in such a way. And many a times we feel that while we are doing the IVTR, intraventricular tunnel repair in case of the DORV VSD, here also sometimes VSD missed and surgeon closed the VSD, but we see the step up, and while doing the T, we see the there is a flow across the near the aorta. And recently we faced one patient here. There was a muscle bundle. Surgeon twice went on the bypass, and ultimately he found one muscle bundle near the aorta, below the aorta. And when he cuts, he found the VSD was lying below the muscle bundle, so he closed. So such type of tricky cases is very, very difficult, and it's challenging for anesthesiologists to diagnose things. We may require pediatric cardiologist help also, but they also not able to much help. Surgeon has to look for this, and we are really in trouble. We are getting the flow, but we cannot much guide where is the problem.
Absolutely right, madam. We have seen that quite a few cases, especially with the tetralogies, they would have quoted it as one VSD, but after the main VSD is closed, you find a posterior muscular VSD. Just 3 days back, we had to go back on bypass to close that posterior muscular VSD because there was a nice flow across the VSD, and surgeon could get it afterwards. That, as you said, there'll be sometimes muscle bundle, which when divided, you see that the VSD becomes larger and it needs to be closed with a patch. Very right observation. Thank you, madam, for the comment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the participants, and thank Dr. Keshamurthy for that excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Now we are just closing the session. Before that, I would like to announce that next Sunday there will be no TEE breakfast session from FCA in view of the National IACTA conference that time. And next month, 17th and 18th March, in addition to the usual Sunday sessions, we'll be having ECMO CMA on the 17th and 18th March in the evening. Please join us, and let us all travel together in the path of gaining knowledge for the patient's benefit. Thank you very much, and we are now ready to enjoy our Sundays. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for the patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keshav sir, and all the faculties and the attendees. Happy Sunday to everyone. Thank you, sir.